how many people by hands have ever been to Target? Anybody here? Okay, a couple of us have been to Target. Now, if you go in the cookie aisle, there's a box that has Partake on the top. Anybody ever seen Partake cookies? I'm a fan. Y'all are going to hear from her, but before y'all hear from her, let me introduce the moderator of this fireside chat, Miss Brianne Garrett. Give her a round of applause. Got your mic here.
All right, how's everybody doing? Feeling all right? Yay! I have the honor of introducing the amazing CEO and founder of Partake Foods, Denise Woodard. Come on up. All right. You're in for a treat, and hopefully a literal treat later if you purchase her amazing goodies. I had to go there. Denise, how are you doing today?
I'm great. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to be here with you and for our conversation.
Yes. So let's get into it. Partake Foods has amassed an amazing amount of funding, historic funding rounds. When you think about all this success, I want to talk about, are you celebrating your wins? What feelings come to mind? How are you feeling in this moment?
I feel inspired being in community here because I started Partake. We lived in Jersey City, and it was through events like this that I got the word out about our business, that I got to meet our consumers, that I met potential investors, and so I feel a bit nostalgic being here and inspired by the entrepreneurs that I've had a chance to meet today. You know, when I think about my Partake journey, the word that comes to mind is gratitude. I know that it has been, you know, luck, favor, a lot of good things that have come our way that have allowed us to we've raised about $25 million in outside funding. Our products can be found in about 18,000 stores. And when I say we started small, we started small. I pawned my engagement ring to fund the business. I was every single weekend at trade shows like this. I would drag my daughter along. She could probably put together a trade show booth faster than most adults. And so I feel gratitude for the journey, for the success we've had. And I feel an indebtedness to pay that forward.
Yeah, and let's run it back. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure many people in this room already know, it is an allergy-friendly cookie and snacks brand that you founded out of your own personal need, your daughter's need. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I spent my career in corporate America. Grew up in Fayetteville, North Carolina, a very humble upbringing. Neither of my parents graduated high school, and the feedback was go to college, go to corporate America, and never leave. And I clearly did not follow instructions, but for a period of time I did. I spent most of my career at Coca-Cola, where I was working on emerging beverage brands, and I was getting to see entrepreneurs solve problems for themselves, have financial success, build life-changing products around missions and values that I really could get aligned with. And then my daughter came along. She's 9 years old now, but right around her first birthday, we learned she had a lot of food allergies, and I was just frustrated with what I could and couldn't find for her, taste-wise, nutritionally. And I thought about, I grew up, I'm Black and Korean, and in both communities, food is something that's meant to bring people together. And when you can't safely and confidently participate in those events, it wears on you emotionally. And so I wanted to create a brand that had products that tasted good, that had ingredients you could understand, but that was cool enough, for lack of better words, that people without food allergies and dietary restrictions would want to enjoy it as well. And so had the idea for the business in 2016, left Coke in 2017, and officially launched Partake.
Thank you for that. Truly a game changer for people, including me. I have a tree nut allergy, and so it really has been a game changer. We didn't talk about that.
I know that.
So much to talk about. So I think a misconception in this space is that brands, successful brands like yours, have achieved overnight success, which I know couldn't be farther from the truth, and you are encountering and have encountered various challenges that you are more than willing to be candid about. Can you identify one of your major challenges? It could be one already achieved, or something that is ongoing. What comes to mind?
The thing that comes to mind for me most is a conversation that happens a lot, but I think still isn't happening enough because we haven't seen action in the numbers, is around funding. 0.41% of venture capital dollars goes to Black women. Black women start companies at a rate faster than any other group in our country. There's a big disconnect there, and I think over the past year or two, we've seen that number suffer even more. And so for me, funding the business was probably the biggest challenge, because you can have a great idea, you can be an amazing founder, but at the end of the day, it takes money to build a business, and it takes money to grow a business. And so we tried to exhaust every single path possible from a funding perspective. We self-funded as much as we could, and I'm not saying this is sound financial advice that you should take, but we maxed out our credit cards, we emptied our 401ks, we emptied our savings, I pawned my engagement ring, like we were all in financially. And I will say that with the caveat of, I was seeing success in the demos I was doing. I was getting yeses from Whole Foods. So it wasn't like I blindly one day was like, let's just put all the money in this business. It was more like, as I was continuing to see success with the business and not able to raise outside funding, I had to take it upon myself to try to get where I needed to go. We raised over $100,000 through pitch competitions. And, I often get asked the question of like, well, how did you find them? Like, there really is no magic secret or silver bullet to any of this. Every single Monday, I would Google local pitch competitions, anything that I felt like I would qualify for, like people from North Carolina pitch competitions, New York City founder people pitch competitions. Like, we raised about $100,000 that way. We ran a Kickstarter campaign that raised about $40,000. So like, kind of trying to tap every avenue I could. And then once we did get a yes from Whole Foods and Wegmans, we realized the game was getting much more expensive. And so we tried to raise some friends and family capital. And I think, that's a loose term when you have no accredited investors in your family. And so thankfully, I had a lot of supportive old coworkers. My husband did, and we collected $5,000 and $10,000 checks to raise about $400,000 over the course of 9 months. That allowed us to prove out success at Whole Foods and Wegmans, and through a chance connection, got connected to Marcy Venture Partners, which is Jay-Z's venture fund, who led our first $1 million seed round of funding. And I think the lesson I learned from that was the hundreds of no's that I got before Marcy said yes weren't necessarily personal to me, because half of those people came back after Marcy said yes and said, oh, we're super interested in the business. And so I think it's really easy when you've built something out of a personal need, like all of this is so personal to us, that it can be offensive when somebody doesn't want to invest and it feels like a knock on you and that they don't believe in you. And sometimes it's not about you, because we were same founder, same company, same product, same traction, and one influential person said yes, and then all these other people started to try to follow along. And so funding for sure has been the biggest challenge, but it ebbs and flows as we've grown the team. People are a challenge. Remote workforce versus in person. How fast do you grow? How much do you use outside contractors versus building out the team? Retail has been a challenge, because I think we've also seen 2020 for us, we had never seen the inbound that we saw after George Floyd got murdered, and the energy around DEI and how retailers are thinking about that has changed significantly. So Brianne, I could ramble on for hours about the challenges.
We need it. We need all of this insight, and I do want to go back to that retail point. But before I do, I want to ask you, what was your mindset, and what still is your mindset when it comes to raising capital and ensuring that you are prioritizing your bottom line, your core values? Who do you look for in aligned investors?
So when we raised after we raised our seed round of capital, we grew significantly in 2020. And at the end of 2020, we raised a $5 million Series A. And it was a total 180 from when we had gone out to raise the seed round of funding. Because of the growth that we had seen, people were throwing term sheets at us. And that's when I started to get really intentional about the kinds of people that I wanted around the table. And so I needed to solve for business challenges. So for me, that meant the people who make Biscoff cookies, Lotus Bakeries, they're an investor in our business because they own a lot of cookie factories around the world. And I knew that we would need operational expertise. Marcy had been day one supporters. They invested in my business when I was still selling cookies out of my car. I wanted to make sure they had a seat at the table. And the rest of the round I allocated towards women and people of color and funds that support women or people of color, because I felt like when Partake has success, that return they get from our business, hopefully they can then go pay that forward and invest in other women and other people of color. And so having people around the table that are aligned with you from a mission and values perspective, I think is so critically important. Getting out of an investor relationship is probably harder than getting divorced. And these people are going to have a say in your business. They're going to have a kind of like they're going to be in your ear all the time, around the table with you, and you want to make sure that you're also very honest up front about what success looks like, because I think sometimes the tension between investors and founders comes from, well, the founder said something when they wanted to get the money, and really maybe they didn't mean it completely, and then when like push comes to shove and like you're in it, like you just want to make sure you're really honest about what success looks like. And so for me, that is like when I'm doing my pitch, I am very clear in the beginning of we are a B Corp. We have a 501c3 that supports HBCU students going into the food industry. We've donated millions of meals to food insecure families. And like, I want them to know how serious I am about doing good, because if that's something that they're not aligned with, they're probably not the right partner for me.
Amen to that. And you are clearly an innovator, a master strategist. And so that has meant coming with creative routes, alternative routes to retail. So what does that look like for aspiring business owners in the room? What advice can you give as far as alternative, non-traditional, perhaps, means of revenue?
So I think I don't want to take too much credit, because I think so many of us have grown up in environments where you kind of got to find a way or make one. And so like we just had to get creative, because like we knew retail was going to be too expensive for us to go into in a meaningful way in the beginning. So we're like, well, how else can we grow revenue for the business? And how else can we get more eyeballs on the business? Because we don't have the marketing dollars to compete with the brands we're sitting next to on shelf. And so for me, that meant going into what we call food service and alternative channels of business. And so you can find our cookies on JetBlue Airlines. You can find them in a flavor with Ben & Jerry's. You can find them at workplaces and in schools. And that business, not to get too in the weeds, but has a shorter cash conversion cycle often. So they're paying you more quickly. Oftentimes it doesn't come with promotional spend. Oftentimes a lot of those organizations, I feel like, are very passionate about a lot of their ESG and DEI efforts, and I really want to have a push there and be innovative there. A lot of those groups are willing to take a chance on innovative brands because they want to be a point of discovery versus just having the same old staples. And so I think I can't take necessarily like credit for the idea, because it came twofold. One, just out of pure necessity, and then two, through my experience at Coke, I remember some of the emerging beverage brands. Like the example that always like rings loudly in my head is we had a beverage brand that was selling more to Microsoft's headquarter office in Washington than it was across a retailer with 2,000 doors. And so like there are creative ways to grow your business and to grow revenue and to grow brand awareness that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be on the store shelves of thousands of stores.
Yes, and speaking of creativity, you've done some really fun collaborations, WNBA being one, Marvel being another. How would you say this has helped with your overall brand strategy and visibility? Talk to me about that.
So one of my key learnings from this is I think us giving ourselves more credit about the brand equity we've built in our brands and the value of bringing culture to some of these more established brands. Like when you say those names, like I initially thought like, why would they ever want to do business with us? But when they look at our consumer demographic, they like, we're bringing something to the table that they're not able to achieve on their own. It's been really important, similar to the investor piece, like really keeping in mind my North Star and making sure that we're only aligning with brands that make sense from a mission and values perspective, which has meant turning away partnerships that could have meant a lot of money for the business. But I want, for our consumer base, for myself and my own conscience, to make sure that we're continuing to do what we said we're going to do, which is build more inclusive food future.
Yes, and let's get into something that I couldn't even imagine how you have time to do this, but in addition to being a thriving business owner, Denise is also a writer and has established herself in that way as a very important thought leader. You've written really interesting think pieces like The Quiet Week, 4 types of support that business owners, Black business owners need. What's the value in having this kind of almost side hustle as a writer, and what are you bringing in that way?
So one of the things I'm most passionate about is mentoring. I think I was so fortunate that there were so many people that were willing to pour into me as I was building my business. And then the other thing I'm confronted with is the reality of there's 24 hours in a day. I'm a wife, mom, friend, and CEO of a venture-backed company. And so there's not time that I can't I don't have the time to mentor as many people as I would like to on a one-on-one basis. And so through the writing, I'm hoping that I'm able to reach more people and be able to share some of the things that have been challenges for us or how we're tackling things. And to your point around the quiet week, so for that, for us, we take 2 weeks of the year where our business, we continue like business critical activities like production and customer service, but otherwise like no meetings, no calls, take time, recharge. And one, it came out of personal necessity because I wasn't doing that for myself. And what I was finding, it was like you would go on vacation and you would come back to like hundreds of emails. And so you're just like putting off the work a little bit. And so I wanted the entire team to be able to have a space. I feel like when you're like go, go, go all the time, you can't like be creative. You can't be innovative. You can't like think about the business because you're just so in the business. And so I wanted to give this team the space to be able to do that. So the week leading into Labor Day and then the week between Christmas and New Year, we take as quiet weeks at our company. And then the article in August for Black Business Month, we wrote about 4 ways that you could support Black businesses. And I think oftentimes people just like act like it's so abstract. And so I just wanted to make it really clear, like you could hire people, you could mentor people. Well, actually, I feel like we're over mentored. So that's another conversation. Like you can hire people, you can send the wire in terms of like invest in people. Like you can put your dollars where your mouth and heart are and like support Black businesses by being a paying customer. And so I just wanted to be able to put some action items behind, like I get the question a lot, like, well, what can I do to support? And so I just wanted to make it really clear.
Yeah. I want to talk about you because I feel like one of the best ways to get to know a brand is to understand the person behind the brand. So you moved to LA not too long ago from the East Coast, from New York. Thank you for coming back to us briefly. Talk about the value of that, how you've been able to factor in wellness and how you're prioritizing yourself.
So I've been trying to make a habit of just like being still and checking in on myself and seeing how I'm feeling. And while I think New York is the greatest city in the world, after spending 11 years here, the hustle and bustle, alongside the hustle and bustle of my business, my nervous system just couldn't take it. And so I needed to be in a big city still. We manufacture our products on the West Coast. A lot of our investors are on the West Coast. And so thankfully, my husband and daughter were aligned and we moved to LA last year. And so for me, it's meant being able to get outside more, get to the beach for a walk, get into the mountains for a hike. A lot of our team is still based on the East Coast. And so I'm still keeping East Coast hours, which means I can do school pickup every day and spend time with my family. And so just being really intentional about the boundaries I set, how I'm spending my time, and really just checking in with myself and not waiting till it's too late. I think oftentimes I've been guilty of like, I check in, but really it's because I've been like sat down and like, okay, you get sick or you get hurt or like you get to almost like a breaking point. And so just really making it a part of your routine to check in with yourself on a really regular basis and then adjusting whether it be, you know, your activities, the people you're surrounding yourself with, where you live, based on what you feel.
Giving yourself time to breathe.
Yes.
I love that for you. So we are at the Culinary Creatives Conference. So we can't have this conversation without me asking you, what would you say is the most creative part of the process with Partake Foods?
So for us, I think the most creative parts of the process are around innovation. And so we're heads down on the innovation work right now. Like, how do we bring something new and creative to our customers within the guardrails of like, can we manufacture it? Does it meet our standards? And so I feel like you have to operate within some sort of a bit of a box, but getting to be creative around the flavor, the category expansion, and how we're going to sell it, how we're going to announce it. And then I think also on the brand partnership front, like I think there's some natural brand partnerships, cookies and milk and things like that, but I think really looking at innovative brands that are outside of the food and beverage space and like how we can lean into their consumers to expose for our brands to expose each other to each other's consumer bases. And so really thinking about brand partnerships has been like one of my favorite parts of the business, where I feel like we get to be creative, and then innovation really is just a creative process. We used to make it strictly creative, but we've added a lot more data into the process of the innovation piece as the business has grown.
I love that. Can we dive into that a bit more, the value of data in informing how you move? And I also love the fact that you use other brands that you admire as case studies for maybe how you should be innovating, what you should be modeling, obviously in your own way? How does that come in?
So on the data piece, I will say like it was a lesson learned, a lesson that we're still learning. We launched a line of baking mixes right after COVID because everyone was at home baking, and we felt like, of course, why don't we just jump on this trend? And so we started making baking mixes. And while I think they're a great product, I realized how much it was taking the team. Like, we're a team of 11 full-time employees. We're not a huge team. Like, it was taking the team's focus away. That's like, pragmatically 2 different buyers that you have to meet with at retail. It's 2 different types of content you have to make. Oh, making brownies and showing how you can utilize the cookies. It's 2 different production schedules you have to manage. And so had we taken a look at the data of the size of the baking mix market, and had we also looked at the data around the room of like what bandwidth do we actually have, we probably wouldn't have made that decision, but we wanted to be creative, and so we went for it. And lesson learned, which I think is the best part of the journey, is like there's going to be mistakes. I make mistakes every day, every hour, but like, how do you learn from those? How do you rebound from those? How do you let those affect how you move forward?
I love the honesty. Thank you so much. And I want to end this amazing panel before we get into questions, so think through those, with what are you most excited about as Partake Foods evolves?
I think that 2023 and 2024 have been kind of like slow down to speed up years for me personally, like trying to take some space and figure out what makes me happy in the business, what makes me happy personally, and really getting honest with myself about that. And then also on the business, like, we had a lot of growth. We grew our revenue more than 10x in 2020, 2021. And building the plane while you fly it is fun, but also stuff the wing can fall off. And so we needed to make sure that the business was really sound from a unit economics perspective, from a manufacturing relationship perspective, like the least sexy brass tacks stuff. And I think once you feel good about having that, it's time to take off again. And so I feel like we're going into one of those periods. I think hopefully the economy is also starting to move in that way. And so hopefully, a lot of good stuff to come in the form of products and brand partnerships. I feel like we're just getting started all over again.
I'm so excited for you, embracing all the seasons. Yes. Why don't we segue into questions if anyone has any? I think we have a mic going around.
Hi, Brianne. Hi, I'm Denise. I have a Q&A series with FSR Magazine. So you really talked about the value of brand partnerships. Can you talk about how you seek out certain brands that align with your mission and why it's important to scale your business in regarding brand partnerships?
So for us, when I think about scaling brand partnerships, one of the ones that is kind of at the biggest scale is our partnership with JetBlue. Over 1 million people a month are seeing our products on their airlines. And for us, we thought about where our consumers are, and we want to meet them where they live and work and play, and what airlines are our consumers flying. And so we, outright approach them. For some of our other partnerships, like Ben & Jerry's came to us, and we were able to build a relationship with the Unilever team, and we really admired what they had done in terms of keeping up the integrity of the products, but also more importantly, being true to who they are from a values perspective. So we, have a wish list of brands, and so we think about how would we want to activate with them. So for example, we launched a line of vanilla wafers this year, and Magnolia Bakery, doing something with them would be amazing. So we have a wish list, and then we've also been fortunate that we've had some people come our way, and all of it really is rooted in serving the consumer. Is this something our consumer would want? Do they not have an allergy-friendly option? I think one other example for us is DoubleTree hotels. You check into DoubleTree, you get a warm chocolate chip cookie. If you have food allergies, you didn't, and now they have a Partake. That's us. And now you have a we have a co-branded soft chocolate chip cookie with them. And so at the root of it, I think about my daughter. I think about where would she not be able to safely and confidently participate before, and how can I make that a reality for more families?
Those cookies were the highlight of my honeymoon. Yay! I mean, besides my wife.
Hi, I'm Bree from Plant-Based Bree. I just wanted to say what you said about slowing down to speed up really resonated with me, so thank you for that. But my question is, you spoke about going from corporate to moving into the food space. Do you have advice to give for people who are kind of in a pivot season in life where they want to leave maybe a career that's not serving them and venture off into something that is a bit more entrepreneurial focused?
Sure. So I think that can come in a few different ways. I think being honest about what success looks like for you and what you really want, and then being honest about your current situation. And so for me, I had the idea for Partake in 2016. We weren't in a financial place for me just to like up and leave my job to go start a company. And so I was able to kind of honestly do both, but that meant a sacrifice of, this is why I'm needing to slow down now, of like working 2 jobs basically while I was trying to figure that out. You know, for some people, does that mean like consulting in the thing that you have like a primary specialty in while you build your business? Like, I think that can take on many different forms, and it really centers around like what you want, what your timeline is, and what your realistic situation is in the moment.
Thank you for that.
Hi everyone, I'm Marion. I own a cake company, Rum Cake Lab. What you said about slowing down, it resonated because baking is very hard, very labor intensive. And like yourself, you know, in 2019, 2021, my business peaked during COVID, but now I feel like I should have just slowed down back then because I'm so tired right now. I can't even, this is one of the reasons why I'm here. But how do you decide who you mentor and who you know, how do you decide about the mentoring part of it?
So right now, which is like really, my team gets on me and it's like so painful. I'm really like, you know, I have conversations with people, but in terms of like formal mentoring relationships, as a part of my slowing down, like I just like am not able to dedicate a lot of time to one-on-one mentoring. Target is one of our biggest customers. They gave us a chance when we were a team of 2 people, and they run a program called Forward Founders, which if anyone isn't familiar with, I would totally look into because it's a phenomenal program. And through that program, I'm able to mentor like 30 people at a time. And so I'm trying to find ways that I can kind of scale the mentorship. I think about, you know, once we get through this season, like, you know, how can I create office hours, or what can that look like that is sustainable for me, but allows me to pour into entrepreneurs. I think the thing that I did was, you know, build a founder community, because I feel like some of my best mentorship comes from people who are at the exact same stage as me, going through the same things as me. I think also I made the mistake early on of like trying to reach out to these people that I perceived as like super success, who had like so much success, and they were also so busy. And like when you're having success, sometimes it's easy to be like, oh yeah, just raise that money, it's no big deal. What I found more value in was talking to people who had failed, because when you like put blood, sweat, and tears into something and it hasn't worked out exactly how you want it to, like I felt like those conversations were the most educational for me and where I got the most mentorship. And I really like to have mentorship across the spectrum. I like, you know, for me, being able to pour into people who are a few steps behind me, for my own sanity to be able to talk to people who are going through what I'm going through, and then also to talk to people who've done it before, so hopefully they can help me avoid some of the landmines. And so really creating a network of community and mentorship around you that isn't just people who are a bit further along.
Hello, thank you for being here with us. My name is Cassandra Vilmar. I'm the owner of La Cou Cafe. We're a small cafe, Haitian fusion, based in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. I guess my question for you is, as you know, somebody who started your own business from scratch, at what point did you decide having equity or like a partner made sense for you? And when I say at what point, like what dollar point, what timeline did it make sense for you, and what was your thought process surrounding that?
So because of my corporate background, I feel like I had seen entrepreneurship at scale, these beverage brands that had gotten acquired or invested in by Coke. And I knew for what I wanted to build a brand that would serve millions of people, be in thousands of stores. And so when I thought about the funding milestones, and which meant giving up equity in the business, I probably, like in a perfect world, maybe would have raised a little bit sooner, but that also wasn't a reality for me because I didn't have access to capital, and there weren't people who were willing to write me checks. And so it felt like getting to the threshold of being in, like for a CPG, like packaged food brand, being in Whole Foods and having success in Whole Foods was going to be the tipping point that would allow me to get into more retail doors, and that would allow me to raise outside capital. So I set my sights on like, okay, I need to prove things out in my local market. So I was literally hand delivering cookies to stores in New York. I was like, if I can get into 50 stores and have success there, I think that's enough to get Whole Foods to say, okay, maybe there's something here. So I went like for 9 months, 10 months, I was just door to door selling cookies every single day. That's what I did. And then during that time period, I was also like literally to get into Whole Foods, I emailed every person on LinkedIn whose job title was category manager. Somebody took pity on me and forwarded me to the right person. And we got into Whole Foods. And that felt like the moment where I would be able to raise capital. Why I say it's too late is when you get on a store shelf, you need to be ready to go with the marketing plan to turn on. I had to like get in and try to hustle and figure out how to just like demo myself or whatever, like with no capital. And so like if you can have capital in that moment, which honestly I feel like is a luxury for most Black and brown entrepreneurs, yeah, so I thought about it in terms of like retailer margin, retailer milestones, but I think it differs for like a brick and mortar business or whatever. So I don't know if it's like a certain amount of dollars going through the door, or if it's, you know, opening a second location, or what the turning point is. But I think being really clear about what those milestones are and then validating them. For me to say like, oh, getting into Whole Foods and having success will mean I can get into other retailers, I validated that with Target and said like, exactly what do you need to see for me to be on your store shelves? And I found somebody at Whole Foods in a different category who was like, if you can, 35 to 50 stores, that would give us enough confidence. So like really making sure you validate the plan as you move forward.
Thank you.
Peace, Denise. Thank you so much for coming and dropping these gems and this knowledge. What you said about sticking to your original plan and values when it comes to investors and externals really resonated. And congratulations, obviously, on all of the success. My question is, now that you've gotten to that proverbial next level, are there goals and aspirations that you have now that you weren't able to have or envision when you first got started that maybe even might take you beyond Partake?
For sure. So thank you. It's interesting. I think one of my biggest lessons has been to enjoy the journey while you're on it, because I've spent so much time wishing away. Like when I was selling cookies out of my car, I was like, I can't wait till I'm in Whole Foods. As soon as I got into Whole Foods, I was like, I'm getting in Target tomorrow. As soon as we got into Target, I was like, okay, we got to get in. Like that hustle culture and hustle mentality, there's a piece of that you need to be successful as an entrepreneur. There's a piece of that will kill you and kill your spirit. And so like, I think we achieved the amount of success when I started the business. I was like, if we can get into 10,000 doors and raise this amount of capital, like I made it. But I don't feel like that. I feel like I'm just getting started, like international expansion, different product lines. I want Partake to be in every part of the grocery store. JetBlue, love their partnership, but I also want to be in, I want to be on other airlines too. I think that there's such a huge need for the consumers we're serving. I also think like when I look around the room, like when I go to conferences and things, there still hasn't been enough change. There's not enough women and there's not enough people of color in leadership roles. And I feel a responsibility to, like, if I have an opportunity and I have people around me that are pushing me forward, like to go as far as I possibly can. And so I don't know where that will be, but I feel like we still have a long way to go, hopefully.
Hi, my name is Eden, and I'm the creator of Black Foodie, and I like to celebrate Black food everywhere. And your journey is super inspiring. And because I'm always seeing people do really cool things with food products, and you've made it now where you're in stores. I'd love to know if there are gaps in the market that you see where you're like, if I didn't do Partake, maybe I would be in this lane of the grocery store. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that because I literally dragged my daughter to a grocery store yesterday because as we think about innovation, like I'm trying to find where the white space is. And honestly, like I don't want to make something for the sake of making something. And it does feel like the market right now, like I know that there is room for innovation, but I am having a challenge myself with like, what's something we can make better? What's something we can make allergy friendly? Because I don't want to do a Me Too product. So honestly, there isn't anything particular that comes to mind. And yet, I still recognize there's a tremendous amount of change that needs to happen. There's, less than 10 food companies that own just about the entire food supply, and it's full of high fructose corn syrup and GMOs and artificial ingredients. And so I think that there's a tremendous amount of room, and hopefully the consumer starts to demand or continues to demand that there's change in our food system. Like I would love to see more organic, more regenerative, and I also recognize the way that the supply chain is set up, like that doesn't make things accessible from a price point perspective all the time, and there's 13 million Americans who are food insecure. And so like how do you make high quality products, how do you make innovative products that can serve a mass amount of people? And I think that there has to be change that's pushed from the consumer. I think there has to be change that the customer in the form of a retailer mandates. I think that hopefully there will be some public sector and government involvement and mandates around what can and can't be served as food when you look at like here versus other countries in the world. So I say like I think the market is kind of crowded right now because there's definitely a lot of like, oh, I've thrown mushrooms into this, I've thrown protein into this, I threw ashwagandha into this, and also like, it's Fruit Loops everywhere. And so like, it's this weird like juxtaposition.
Thank you.
Denise, thank you so much, Denise. This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you all for joining us. More to come.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.